Namaskar, this is Akhilesh Bhargava. Welcome to Tit-Bits on Business and Finance with me. The government often claims that as part of reforms, it has been decluttering the laws, it has been deregulating. The Prime Minister himself is on record saying that during his regime, 1500 laws have been abolished, they have been taken off the rule book. But the fact of the matter is that what is being abolished are outdated, obsolete, and irrelevant laws. Laws which are no longer relevant, which were framed many decades ago, which were framed for some specific reason, and now it no longer exists. So it is these kind of outdated laws which are thrown off the rule book. But those which we face on a daily basis are business, corporate, and tax laws, GST, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, Income Tax Act, Companies Act, etc. As far as these laws are concerned, they only get more and more harsh, difficult, and complex with each passing day. An act like the GST Act, which was framed in middle of 2017, today has already had hundreds and hundreds of regulations and amendments coming through, only making the law very, very difficult to follow, very difficult to interpret, and very harsh on the entrepreneur. India very obviously has a tendency to frame complex, difficult, and harsh laws. And the more they are framed, the more we have overregulation, the more we have what we call heavy-handed regulation, and resultantly, India certainly is an overregulated country today. Our unending laws, our ever-increasing laws, our ever-increasing amendments, circulars, notifications, regulations under the laws, they only end up burdening the common entrepreneur. They deny him very often of his livelihood, profits. They of course make life difficult for him. But then the laws continue to increase, overregulation continues to increase, notwithstanding the government's claims that it has been abolishing laws. While the laws keep going up, ironically, they go up in number, regulations keep coming in. But despite that, we have only seen more and more corporate banking and financial fraud surface of late. Because of such overregulation, compliance procedures go up, the need for compliance shoots up, corruption goes up, red tapeism goes up, and the administration only becomes more and more ineffective. This impact of overregulation, the adversities of overregulation are best reflected in the banking sector today. Banking is a highly regulated territory, and despite its overregulation, what do we face today? We face an NPA crisis. We face a situation where lakhs of crores of money have gone down the drain. Frauds have taken place, willful default has taken place, despite all the regulations which are there. And then restructurings took place, which were again bogus. And the result today is that a sector which is so highly overregulated today is virtually out of business. A borrower finds it difficult to borrow because of more regulations and requirements that have come in, and a lender does not like to truly lend. A banker today is averse to lending. With all these regulations that have come in, he is afraid that in case a lending decision goes bad, he is going to face what we call the 4 C's: CBC, CBI, CAG, and the courts. And thus, a banker doesn't lend. A sector where lending is supposed to take place is so highly overregulated that neither a borrower is able to borrow and neither does a lender want to. That's the impact of overregulation that we see in India. India, incidentally, is not the only nation, according to us, which faces an overkill of overregulation. In any country where there is a tendency to draft a law, to come out with a regulation which covers all possible outcomes, scenarios, such a country will always witness overregulation taking place. Take the case of the United States. After the global economic meltdown and slump that took place, the country enacted a new law in order to take care, in order to prevent corporate and banking frauds and failures. It was called the Dodd-Frank Act. The act ran into 890 pages with 390 sections. And what did it do? It imposed additional duties, responsibilities, and liabilities on the boards of directors of companies, and that too 184 new responsibilities and duties. It created a scenario of what is called complexity risk. It was so complex to adhere and administer that this kind of a risk was coined, and that was completely on account of overregulation. There was no need for something like this, but the act enacted it thinking it needed to plug any possible scenario of a corporate misdemeanor. And here we have an act like that, so complicated, complexity risk because of overregulation, and which is what even India faces. The economic survey that was presented last week surprisingly spoke about overregulation in India. It mentioned a certain ranking to say that India is not just overregulated, but because of that, our administration has also become ineffective. It says that as per that survey, out of 128 nations, India is ranked a moderate 45 in respect of following of a due process in administration. That's of course very evident. Every Babu likes to follow the checklist that is provided and prescribed in the law. He does not bypass it, and that explains why the due process of law and administration is followed in India. But when it comes to the delays in administration processes because of which we are ranked a lowly 89 out of 128, it explains the delays that take place in India because of multiple laws and because of red tapeism and corruption. And then when it comes to effectiveness of enforcement of the administration of the law, we are ranked a dismal 104 out of 128. It's a case of overregulation making administration ineffective. The irony is that we as citizens respect laws and adhere to it. Most of us do that. There are few violators, but it is we who are at the receiving end where new and new laws are imposed on us, and overregulation continues to increase. New laws come into picture, and the existing ones like the GST, income tax, etc. only have more and more notifications, circulars and regulations coming, making the law extremely difficult and hard, and increasing the ineffectiveness of the very administration of the law. The economic survey mentions reasons why India faces overregulation and the ineffectiveness of its administration. The first one it says is that India has a tendency to frame laws trying to take care of every possible scenario, contingency or situation in future. It likes to factor in every possible contingency that may arise in future, and that is not possible. You cannot predict every unknown. You are bound to have what is called incomplete regulation because the future is unknown. No law can anticipate all possible outcomes, but yet in India, the Babu tries to do that. That results in heavy laws. It results in bulky laws. It results in too many procedures to be followed. And the net result is that everybody who is administered by the law is taken as a potential violator. The law assumes a worst possible scenario and then it frames its regulations, and resultantly, the act is not protective or preventive, but it becomes one which suspects, one which punishes, and one which also prosecutes in a very frivolous manner. It's all because the Babu wants to come with a law which is all encompassing, which can take place of any possible future contingency, but that doesn't happen. The result of such a bulky law is poor administration, and violators have a good time, as we have been often seeing. Such unnecessarily extensive and expansive laws, such laws which are overarching for no reason, they only give more and more power and discretion to the Babu, and we are seeing the impact of that in our daily lives. The Babu actually prefers regulation, because with every regulation, over-regulation, comes a checklist and a criteria that has to follow only in a most mechanical manner. If something goes wrong, he only has to show that he followed the checklist and the criteria, and that helps the Babu to avoid his accountability. Because of this, the Babus keep adding, the bureaucracy adds more and more regulations to the existing laws. That only increases their domain. It gives them more power. It gives them more discretion. It gives them more avenues of red tapeism. And of course, it increases corruption in the country. The Babus preference is for following checklists in the most mechanical manner. And because of that, he avoids supervision. Even if in such a situation supervision is imposed, he only shows the checklist that was followed. And the result is that the Babu's accountability is reduced completely. To us, overregulation only gives rise to red tapeism, delays, disputes, litigation, and corruption. But that is what suits the system. So the economic survey spoke about overregulation in India. It spoke about how, because of overregulation, administration becomes more and more ineffective. The larger picture to us is that the ineffectiveness of regulation or administration in India is not because we have weak laws, inadequate laws, deficit laws, or poor compliance. It is the reverse. It is because of overregulation. And that overregulation in India comes with poor or low supervision, because of which accountability and transparency of the administration is completely diluted. Further, overregulation in India becomes worse in its impact on account of a slow, ineffective, sometimes insensitive, and extremely expensive and uncertain legal and judicial system. That makes the hit of overregulation on the common man much harder. Otherwise, you could go to courts and get relief. The fact of the matter is that framing of laws and their administration in India always proceed on what is called the worst case scenario. And because of that, every person is treated as a potential violator. Every person is suspected. The Babu gets more laws and regulations and powers. The Babu gets more red tape. The Babu gets more discretion. And of course, it results in more and more corruption. The need of the hour is actually to declutter these laws. The need of the hour is actually to ensure that these laws are made lighter and the entire attitude is changed. And if that happens, India certainly becomes a far better territory. Our complexity risk will go down, and that's what the government needs to do. Removing obsolete and outdated laws is not where the solution lies. The solution lies in genuine deregulation and not the cosmetic one which we've been seeing of late. This is Akhilesh Bhargava signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.
Hello everyone. HW News English is 2 years old now. When we started this venture, we promised ourselves one thing, that news should remain free, because right to know is the right of every Indian. But to keep news free for everyone, we need support from some of you. And thus we have rolled out membership on our YouTube channel HW News English. But mind you, the membership is completely voluntary. The programs that we were doing earlier, that we are doing now, will continue to remain free. First level is a basic level. Here you can be our supporter by paying rupees 199 per month. This membership gives you certain perks and benefits. The perks include unique badges in front of your name, a live show from Mr. Sujit Nair and from Mr. Akhilesh Bhargava per month for our members. You can also vote in some exclusive members-only polls. Now the second level is Super Supporter. Here you can be our Super Supporter by paying rupees 3,999 per month. This membership will include every perk that comes with basic level. Additionally, our super supporters can be a part of a WhatsApp group where we can have discussions and suggestions on various topics. The second perk includes a gift pack with our merchandise. And the third perk is a Google Meet with Mr. Sujit Nair, where you can join the meet and ask your questions to Mr. Nair face to face. Lastly, if you like, we would give a shout out to our super supporters in our programs. So, hope to see you soon with our badges.